Our team is team 3. Our team has Phạm Khánh Linh, Vũ Thị Thị Trang, Bùi Minh Ngọc, and Nguyễn Hà My. This is the table of the contents of our chapter. First one, we will be looking at the definition of the microenvironment and the difference among microeconomic and macroeconomic factors. Next one, we will be looking at the demand schedule and the supply. Last but not least, we will be looking deeper at maximum and minimum prices. We'll come to the first part is microeconomic factors. A microenvironment. Business runs successfully only when they consider all the internal and external factors and prepare the business strategies accordingly. The business operates in a large and complicated ecosystem known as the microenvironment. Here we will discuss the microenvironment and factors of microenvironment. Microenvironment is the environment that exists within a company organization and can influence daily operations. It refers to the specific and immediate surroundings in which a company operates and interacts with various stakeholders. It includes the factors that directly affect the organization's ability to serve its customers and achieve its objective. Understanding the microenvironment is important for businesses as it helps them identify opportunities, resist risk, and develop effective strategies. This means the microenvironment consists of factors that are within company's control or that can be directly influenced. These factors are closer to the company and have more immediate impact compared to the microenvironment, which include broader societal, economic, and political forces. Let's understand the microenvironment with the help of a clothing retailer. Their success depends not only on the quality and style of their clothes, their ability to understand and adapt to the factors surrounding them also matters. They must carefully analyze the customer preference, keep an eye on their competitors' move, make strong relationship with reliable suppliers, and watch the ever-changing fashion trend. This retailer must navigate the current customer demands, chart their course in harsh competition, adjust the product based on the market trend, and carefully stay away from legal and regulatory restriction. By this way, the retailer can set themselves up for bigger objective and reach a wide audience. First, there are 5 components of microenvironments. They are suppliers, marketing intermediaries, competitors, general public, and the customer. We come to the first component is customer. The business enterprise aims to earn profit through serving the customer demand. Today, market of a firm begins and ends with the customer. Nowadays, a business firm to be successful must find customer for its product. This is the reason the customer becomes the most important element in the macro environment of the business. Product sales depend mainly on the degree of customer satisfaction. In fact, this is the reason that gives more importance to customer satisfaction survey. Now, every business firm set up system to regularly watch customer attitude and customer satisfaction. Normally, the customers are not in the same group. They are individual, business enterprise, and a government. The next one is suppliers. The suppliers are an important part of microenvironments. They are the ones who provide inputs to the business, like raw materials, part, tool, even more. The quality and reliability of suppliers are very essential for smooth functioning of business and of any organization. Marketing managers must have a control on the supplier availability and cost. Any shortage or delay of supplies in terms of natural disaster or other events can cause damage to sales in short run and leads to customer dissatisfaction in the long run. For example, the supply increase the price of raw material they provide to the company. It will impact the marketing mix strategy of an organization, which end up with the increase in price of finished good. Therefore, keeping a strong relation with supplier can help a company in getting an edge over competitors. Next one is the competitors. The competitors of an organization can have a direct impact on business strategies. The organization must know how to do a competitive analysis of competitors and have a competitive advantage. An organization must understand what benefits a company can offer to the customer, which competitor does not offer. It must know how competitors react when there is a change in market environment, such as political and legal change. Change in customer behaviors can impact their business. For example, Honda and Audi or Mercedes are competitors in automobiles market. The form of competition is product form in which customers seek different features and functions in a product. A customer will be willing to purchase a car which can come with gears or without gears, automatic or manual. These are the features of the product and services which customer would be considered when during the purchase process. The fourth component is marketing intermediaries. The marketing intermediaries are also an important part of microenvironment. They include those individuals or firms who help the company in promotion, sales, and distribution of its goods to the final buyers. Example includes middlemen, agents, or merchants who help the company find customer. Physical distribution firms such as warehouse or transportation firms that help the company in stocking and moving goods, and marketing service agencies such as market research and advertising firms. Last but not least is the public. The public refers to the group of people who have an actual or potential interest in company's product or who can have an impact on organization's ability to achieve its objective. There are 7 types of public identified in a company's marketing environment, which includes financial publics, media publics, government publics, citizen action public, internal public, local publics, and general publics. Managing relationships and addressing different public concerns is important for maintaining a positive reputation and minimizing negative impact. We'll come to the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics. About the definition, macroeconomics studies the economy as the whole and not a single unit, but combination of all. And microeconomics is the study of economic actions of individuals and small groups of individuals. Microeconomics concern with particular households, firms, and industries. They also concern with supply, demand, price, markets, some theories of customer behavior. About macroeconomics, it concerns with national incomes, general price levels, national output, unemployment, and poverty. It's about gross product, period, growth, business cycles. About the objective of microeconomics is to maximize utility, wherever on the supply side is to minimize profits at minimum cost. They also study the economics of a scientific perspective is expected to explain the relationship between factors such as income, output, consumption, employment, inflation, investment, multinational trade, and multinational finance. About the macroeconomics, the objective is the full employment, price stability, economic growth, and favorable balance of payment. About the basis of macroeconomics, the basis of macroeconomic is price mechanism with which operates with the help of demand or supply force. About the macroeconomic, the basis is national income, output, and unemployment, which are determined by aggregate demand and supply. The assumption of microeconomic is rational behavior of individual. And about macroeconomic, on the other hand, build its assumption on the aggregate volume of output or an economy, the extent to which its resources are unemployed. About the limitation, macroeconomic is the existence of full employment, and the macroeconomic is involvement of facility of composition, which doesn't prove true. And the last one is the method. About the method of macroeconomic is use modeling method. It is almost as if each macroeconomic phenomenon is described by a separate model, which its own assumption. About the microeconomics, the method is modeling method, static comparison method, or marginal analysis. We'll come to the next one, is the concept of market. In a free market, the price mechanism signals supply and demand conditions for producer and customer. Therefore, it determines the activity for both producers and customers, affecting the price of demand and supply of goods. A market will consist of buyer and seller of goods, and these people influence the price of markets. Markets can be global, like oil, wheat, or gold, but there are also markets that are local in nature, such as housing market or a market for used car. A market can be defined as a situation in which potential buyers or potential seller of goods or services come together for the purpose of exchange. Buyers and sellers can be firms, households, or individual, one of the components of micro environments. The theory of price is an economic theory that states the price for a specific good or service is determined by the relationship between its supply and demand at any given point. Prices should be rise if demand exceeds supply and fall if supply exceeds demand. Utility is term used to determine the worth or value of a good or service. More specifically, utility is total satisfaction of or benefit from consuming a good or service. Marginal utility is added satisfaction that a customer gets from having one more unit of good or service. This is used to determine how much of an item customers are willing to purchase. Positive marginal utility occurs when consumption of an additional item increase the total utility. On the other hand, negative marginal utility occurs when consumption of one more unit decrease the overall utility. We come to the customer rationality, means the customers try to maximize the total utility that can be obtained with limited income. When customers decide to buy one unit of another good, they decide that its marginal utility will outweigh the marginal benefit provided by any substitute good at any price they can pay. First, to study price movements in the market, economists assume that customers have rational consumption behavior. This means, in general, customers prefer to pay more good. In general, customers are willing to substitute one good for another provided its price is right. The choice are sensitive. This means that if at any given time good A takes precedent over B and B take precedent over C, then we can conclude that good A take precedent over good C. These assumptions will help us in the study of supply and demand of schedule in the following parts presented by Lin.
To continue to the next part of our presentation, I would like to introduce you about the demand schedule. Demand we can understand as a quantity of goods or service that potential purchaser attempt to buy at any possible price. Uh, the fundamental law of demand is the lower price of goods service, the higher demand of each quantity. Uh, Demand curve is used to summarize the relationship between quantity demanded and price. At a lower price, is P1 in the picture. Quantity demanded is higher in Q1. At a higher price, P2 quantity demanded is lower Q2. The next part is market demand curve. Market demand is a horizontal sum of individual demand. In other words, it is total quantity of goods that would be demanded by all consumers together at any given price. Normally slope down from to the left to the right. In other words, it is represented by a graph running downwards to the right, showing the inverse relationship between the price of a good and the quantity demanded of such. There are 5 factors affect demand of a product. Number 1 is price of good or service. Number 2, income of buyers. Number 3, price of related good or service. Next is taste of consumer, and finally expectation. Price of goods and service is a certain monetary value at which the product is being sold. A higher on price of a product decrease the demand for such. A lower price increase the demand. Thus, there is an inverse relationship between the price of the product and the quantity being demanded. With consumer income, for most goods, there is a positive relationship between income and demand. There defines and normal goods. For inferior goods, there is an inverse relationship between income and demand. So the pattern is what is the difference between normal and inferior goods? This question is empirical. Are peanut a normal good? Are they if they are for you? Up, upon graduation and higher salary, you would buy more peanuts. Uh, what about spam? Is a relationship between income and demand positive or negative? Cheaper food can be understand as an example of inferior food. Price of substitute they for example, what would happen to the demand for tea if the price of coffee fell? So answer definitely is that the demand for tea would probably fall since people would buy coffee instead. Therefore, we can see that there is a positive relationship between the demand for a good and price of its substitute. Price of complements. Complementary goods are good used together. What if the price of beer goes up? what are to happen to the demand for peanuts? We know in the Vietnamese culture, we also use beer with peanut. It also goes down because since people want to beer drink with peanuts, if the price of beer rise, the demand for peanuts will fall. Is in the negative relationship. Consumer expectation and consumer taste is the influence by um, both consumer expectation and consumer taste influence buying decision but are more difficult to assess. Both of these more likely than not differ from person to person. If you were here to hear a news story about how food price were going to go up, would you stop up? And if you expect your employer to begin downsizing, would you reduce your demand for goods now? Although difficult to measure, taste is very important factor in buying decision of consumer. It is what marketing company try to determine before launching a certain product in the market. By doing market research, marketing companies spend a lot of money on this type research. Why? Because in demanding buyers' taste may lead to disastrous mistake in the choice of product to offer to consumer. Likewise, failure in selling or marketing such products may also lead enormous amount of money being wasted. To continue, but we will talk about the price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity measures the responsiveness of the quantity demanded or supply of a good to a change in its price. It is computed as a percentage change in quantity demand or supply divided by the percentage change in price. Elasticity can be described as elastic or very responsive, unit elastic or inelastic, not very responsive. Elastic demand or demand curve indicates that the quantity demanded or to respond to price change in a greater than proportional manner. An elastic demand curve is one where a given percentage change in price will cause a smaller percentage change in quantity demanded or supplied. Unitary elastic means that a given percentage change in price leads to an equal percentage change in quantity demanded. About cross elastic of demand. The cross elastic of demand is an economic concept that measures the responsiveness in the quantity demanded of one good when the price for another one change. The cross elasticity of demand for substitute goods is always positive because the demand for one good increases when the price for the substitute good increases. Alternatively, the cost elasticity of demand for complementary goods is negative. When dealing with unrelated goods, there is generally no cross elastic of demand. Companies often use it to determine and set price of their goods and service. I have one example of cross elasticity of demand to for which us can be understood easily. Let's take a look at two substitute goods from two different restaurants. Suppose both restaurants sell their food for $4 each, but restaurants are decide it want to make more in profits, so it raised the price to $6. Since most people don't want to spend the extra money and the two goods are equal substitutes, there are very good chance that demand for restaurant pay for will increase. Complementary goods are now we will look at the complementary goods and how they are affected by the cross-price elasticity of demand. Consider burgers and fries, which are not necessarily related, but tend to go hand in hand. When people eat burgers, they also tend to eat fries. If the price drops for burgers, demand for fries may increase. Finally, the income elasticity of demand. It is an economic measure of how responsive the quantity demand for a good or service is to change in income. The formula for calculating income elasticity of demand is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in income. Business use the measure to help predict the impact of business cycle on sales. For example, we will consider a local dealership that gathers data on change in demand and consumer income for its cars for a particular year. When the average real income of its customer falls from $50,000 to $40,000, the demand for its car plummets from 10,000 to 5,000 units sold. All other things unchanged. The income elasticity of demand is calculated by taking negative 50% change in demand and dividing it by a 20% change in real income. This produces an elasticity of 2.5, which indicates local customers are particularly sensitive to change in their income when it comes to buying cars. The final part is the shape of demand curve. Any of factors stated above may positively or negatively affect the actual demand for a certain product. We have three keys. A shift to the left corresponds to an actual decrease to the demand. Number two, a shift to the right corresponds to an actual increase to the demand. And the final, there is a movement along the curve if only the price of product are manipulated. We will come to the next part, the supply.
To continue the presentation, I am Trang will present to you the next part. It is about the supply. Starting with the concept of supply. Supply is the quantity of a good or service that a business would be willing and able to sell at different prices during a given period of time are the conditions unchanged. In addition, an important concept to know in this lesson is about the supply schedule. It is the table that shows the quantity supplied at each price. I have a table here. A firm sells cake in an area being summarized in the following table. We can see that a supply schedule has it is the table consisting of two columns. One column reflects the price and the other column reflects the quantity supplied. Supply schedule are an important tool in economic analysis, helping to understand and predict the interaction between prices and the supply of goods or services in the market. For each price, the supply schedule shows the quantity of a good or service that the seller or supplier has available to supply. Look at this table, we can see that the figures in the table show that at the price of 1,000 Vietnam dong, no piece of cake is produced. At such a low price, the firm will not produce, and at the price of 2,000 Vietnam dong, one cake is supplied. When the price of cakes increases, more cakes will be produced, and we can see that with the price of cake increasing from 0 to 6,000 Vietnam dong, the quantity supplied also goes up from 0 to 5 pieces. At higher prices, bakers will earn more profits. Maximizing profit will stimulate them to
produce and supply more cakes to the market. Third, it can be concluded that with the higher the selling price, manufacturers are always ready to supply a larger output to the market. Also, when this supply schedule is depicted on the graph with the vertical axis being price and the horizontal axis being quantity, the line is called the supply curve. We can see in the picture that supply curve named as a supply curve is a curve that describes the relationship between the quantity of a good that firms are willing and able to supply at different prices. Each point on the curve shows quantity supplied at a specific price. Law of supply tells us that supply curve virtually always slope upward. From the information in the supply chart above, we can draw the following graph with the supply curve as being a line with an upward shape. The supply curve is upward sloping for most consumer goods from left to right. An important reason for the positive slope of the supply curve is that the amount of variable inputs increases while the other inputs are fixed. If society wants more of a certain product, people will hire more labor to work on a fixed number of inputs. As time goes on, each additional worker contributes less and less to output. The price level to encourage more production of this good therefore needs to be raised. It is this price increase that will encourage businesses to increase the supply and sell the product in the market. Therefore, the supply curve for the product has a positive slope, and quantity of supplies vary up or down based on suppliers increase or decrease their output quantity. The higher selling price, the higher output quantity supplied. When learning about this part, we need to distinguish two concepts between supply and quantity supplied. Quantity supplied is a specific number and is meaningful only in relation to a price level, and it is a single point on the supply curve. Supply, on the other hand, supply is a concept used to describe the behavior of a seller or business firm. Supply reflects the entire relationship between price and quantity supplied. It's not a specific number, and supply is the whole supply curve. So what are the factors that affect supply? Firstly, it is price of inputs. The price of inputs greatly influence the supply decisions of businesses. When prices of input fall, profits per unit increase and firms increase production. Then supply increases, lead to the supply curve shifts to the right. Secondly, production technology. Production technology has a decisive influence on the productivity of businesses and therefore decisively affects the supply curve. Modern technology helps to increase productivity in the production process. From there, business can produce more and supply more to the market. Advanced technology increases supply and therefore shifts the supply curve to the right. About the number of suppliers, about their scale of production or number of producers. An increase in the number of goods sold will cause an increase in the volume of production. An increase in the supply of the product and an increase in the supply curve move to the right. Fourth, prices of substitute goods, especially those that can be substituted for other outputs of the production process. If the price of one substitute increases, the supply of other substitutes will decrease. For example, a car company often produces different models in the same factory. If the demand for a certain model increases and if the price increases, they will transfer production materials to the site that produces this model. Therefore, the supply of other models will decrease. About expectation. When a business expectation that the price of a certain good will increase in the future, it moves some of their product into the inventory, and when it produces less output to the market, the supply curve shifts to the left. The government policy and regulation, for example, taxes levied on suppliers affect the firm's supply curve because taxes are costs incurred by the business. When a tax is levied on the seller goods, supply decreases and the supply curve shifts to the left. The state often produces policies on waste treatment or environmental protection, and it can affect the behavior of producers. If producers have to pay $5,000 per unit of output, they will want to sell for a higher price than the tax at all levels of output supplied. In other words, we just want and can supply a smaller amount of prices than before. In this case, the supply curve has shifted to the left. You can also see that the exact opposite happened. The supply curve shifts to the right if the producer receives a subsidy from the government, and there are some other special effects like the weather has an important impact on agricultural production, and the supply of passenger cars may increase as the government lowers standards on anti-pollution equipment. About the law of supply. The law of supply states that the quantity of a good or service supplied in a given time will increase as the price of those goods or services increases. In other words, there is a positive relationship between price and quantity. When there is movement only along the supply curve, this means price is the only factor that is changing. When the entire supply curve shifts, it signals that other determinants of supply, excluding price, have changed, like income, consumer taste, expectation, price of related goods, and number of buyers, etc. Any change that increases the quantity of a good or service that sellers want to produce at a given price also shifts the supply curve to the right from curve S to S1, corresponding to a shift from point A to point B. Any change that reduces the quantity of a good or service that sellers want to produce at a given price shifts the supply curve to the left from the curve S1 to the curve S. When other factors are held, the price of the good changes, the quantity supplied of that good decreases. This time, there is a movement along the supply curve. For example, when the price falls, there is a vertical slip on the supply curve from point B to point C, from point B to point E on line S1. When both supply and demand curves are put into the same coordinate system, the vertical axis is price and the horizontal axis is quantity. We see a point at which the supply and demand curves intersect. This point is called the market equilibrium. The level of output at the point where the supply and demand curves intersect is called the market equilibrium quantity, and the price is called the market equilibrium price. The competitive market process leads to an equilibrium price, which is the price at which market supply and market demand are in balance. In any market, the equilibrium price will change if the market demand or supply conditions change. At the equilibrium price, the quantity of a good that buyers are willing and able to buy is exactly equal to the quantity that producers are willing and able to sell. Opposite to the market equilibrium, we have the concept of market disequilibrium. The actions of buyers and sellers naturally make the market move into an equilibrium of supply and demand through price changes. In fact, the state of market can be in one of three states: equilibrium, oversupply, or overdemand. If the market price or quantity supplied is anywhere but At the equilibrium price, the market is a state called disequilibrium. There are two causes for this situation: excess demand and excess supply. Excess demand occurs when quantity demanded is more than quantity supplied, or when price is too low. The market is short of the good. People in need cannot buy all the quantity they want at the current price because there are so many buyers looking for a scarce quantity of a good. Sellers respond to this shortage by increasing their selling price. An increase in prices makes the market to return to equilibrium. About the excess supply. Excess supply occurs when quantity supplied exceeds quantity demanded. When price is too high, the market has an oversupply of goods and businesses do not sell as much as they want at the current price. They react to this oversupply by cutting their selling prices. Prices continue to fall as the market reaches equilibrium. Here I have some examples. First, about the excess demand. As we know, during the time of COVID-19 pandemic, people's demand for masks and medical products has increased dramatically. However, production and business establishment do not fully meet the supply of goods. This problem shows that the supply of goods is smaller than the quantity demand, and as we have seen, the prices of these items like masks and medical supplies have skyrocketed. Every day we buy a box of masks for about 40,000 Vietnam dong, but during the epidemic, the number is up to 80 to 90,000 or even more than 200,000 Vietnam dong. About excess supply, continue with the recent COVID-19 epidemic. Chuyển slide trước. Continue with the recent COVID-19 epidemic. Vietnamese people have had meaningful rescue campaigns for fruits and vegetables for farmers who specialize in exporting. The reason for this is that due to the epidemic, farmers can't export their goods abroad, so many goods such as vegetables and fruits have to turn back to the country to sell to local people. However, the quantity of these items is so large that people cannot consume all of them right away. This has shown that the supply of goods is greater than the demand of the market, leading to a decrease in the price of goods. Here I have an example to look at the example below. I have a schedule and the information in it is shown in the graph next to it, where the vertical axis is the price per slice and the horizontal axis is the number of slices of pizza which are sold. The green line represents the supply curve and the purple line represents the demand curve. The supply and demand curves intersect at point A, and point A is said to be the equilibrium point. At point A, we can understand that at the price of $1.5 a piece of pizza, the quantity of pizza the buyer wants to buy and the amount of pizza the seller needs to sell is in balance. At prices other than the equilibrium price, there will be a surplus or shortage. Specifically, with the price of 1.5 or 1 USD, customers tend to buy more, but this price does not help businesses achieve the profit they want, so the supply decreases and causes a shortage, or we call that oversupply. At the price higher than $1.5, we see that the quantity supplied is already higher than the quantity demand, because the higher the price, the more profit the business will receive. But at that price, the buyer will consider it and not buy it. That leads to excess supply.
If goods are sold on a competitive market without government intervention, prices will adjust to balance supply and demand. However, there are factors that cause market to deviate from equilibrium. The buyer of any good wants a lower value, while the seller wants to sell it at a higher price. Therefore, the interests of these two groups are always in conflict. In order to ensure the common interest of market participants, both groups often lobby the government to participate in price control. Government might try to control prices in two ways. They might set a maximum price or price ceiling for a good, perhaps as part of an anti-inflationary economic policy, or they might set a minimum price or price floor for a good. Firstly, I will talk about maximum price. Government may seek to impose maximum price control or price ceiling on certain goods or services, either to benefit consumers on low incomes so that they can afford the particular good or control inflation. If the government sets a maximum price below the equilibrium price, this will result in a situation in which the quantity demand will exceed the quantity supply. For example, chain companies could increase the big tickets, but government may impose a maximum price or maximum price increase on firms to keep tickets affordable, even if it leads to overcrowding. Or government company impose control on drug prices, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. So what are the disadvantages of maximum prices? First is the shortages of supply. The demand is greater than supply, meaning many consumers could be unable to get a product at all. Because of the shortage, it creates the incentive to develop a black market where people illegally trade the goods. Traders sell their product at exorbitant prices on black market, enabling only the wealthy to purchase. Note also that maximum prices can lead to a misallocation of resources. Producers will reduce output of the products subject to price control because they are now relatively less profitable than those products not subject to price control. A maximum price is best described as a price ceiling in the market. Price ceiling are the high key points at which goods and services can be sold. An example of price ceiling is rent control. The government may set a maximum price for renting to keep housing affordable. Rent control are more common in areas where housing is in short supply. However, a maximum price may reduce the supply of housing, leading to homelessness. So, are price ceiling good or bad? Government impose a price ceiling to control the maximum prices to make commodity affordable to the rental public. However, the application of the price ceiling can lead to black marketing and unrest in the supply side. For example, let's consider the house land market. Here's in a given graph, a price of $300 has been determined as the equilibrium price with the quantity of 30 homes. Now the government determines a price ceiling of $200. At this, there is shortage because demand for 40 houses but supply is for only 20 homes. In the long run, the 20 people will try to get a house on rent, which will eventually give price on black market and higher than. Now we come to the last point, which is minimum price. Minimum price legally imposed price law can be set for different goods and services, which supply can sell the product at a lower price. To be effective, a minimum price must be set above the equilibrium price. If it is set below, then it will have no impact. Minimum price legislation aims to ensure that supply and at least the minimum price for each unit of output they sell. For example, the French government has guaranteed electricity prices for 20 years for renewable supplies such as wind and solar farm. And Scotland became the first country in the world to introduce minimum prices for alcohol in 2018. The price floor was £50 per unit of alcohol. So what are the disadvantages of minimum prices? If the minimum price is set above the market price, it will cause an excess supply, since such a high price will result to higher profits for supplier. The problem with minimum price is that more of the goods will be produced than can be sold at the minimum price, and so surplus quantity will build up, which have to either store or destroy, causing waste of resources. Either way, the minimum price leads to a misallocation of resources to try to prevent oversupply and dumping of excess supply at low prices. A system of production culture might be introduced whereby a supplier is only allowed to produce up to a maximum quantity and no more. A maximum price is best described as a price floor in the market. A price floor is a minimum price set by the government that must be paid for good or service. Minimum wage is the best example for price flooding, which sets a minimum price that an employer can pay a worker for an hour of labor. The purpose of a minimum wage is ensure that low-paid workers earn enough to have an acceptable standard of living. For example, for urban regions like Ho Chi Minh City, Hà Nội, and Da Nang, the minimum wage is 4,680,000 Việt Nam đồng. Price floor good or bad? Price floor helps the government ensure higher wage and a good standard of living for the workers, but this had a flip side too. Price floor leads to a lesser number of workers than in case of equilibrium wage. This is shown by the diagram below. Equilibrium wage is $3. The price floor is determined at $4, which is good for workers who will earn more than before. But the flip side is that while at equilibrium, there were 30 workers. After the price floor, there are only 20 workers. Thus, 10 workers has been let off at the wage of $4. We see a drop of 20 workers because 40 workers are willing to work, but only 20 workers get work, thus giving rise to surplus of workers. This is the end of our presentation. Thank you for listening.
Xin cảm ơn nhóm trình bày. 1, 2, 3, 4. Rồi trước khi mà đi vào nhận xét thì cô sẽ mời hai bạn đặt câu hỏi, ít nhất hai bạn đặt câu hỏi cho nhóm. Nào, xin mời hai câu hỏi đặt cho nhóm ạ. Câu hỏi đầu tiên của Mỹ Hạnh đã typing vào ô chat rồi ạ. Xin mời câu hỏi thứ hai. Chúng ta có 3 câu hỏi rồi ạ. Của Nguyễn Thị Mỹ Hạnh, Ngô Thị Minh Phương và Tạ Thị Thu Hằng. Và chúng ta sẽ dành 10 phút cho các bạn chuẩn bị câu trả lời nhé. 10 phút nữa chúng ta sẽ quay lại 10 giờ 11 đến 10 giờ 21 chúng ta sẽ quay trở lại và nghe câu trả lời của nhóm ạ.